Welcome back. We see headlines every day about the existential threats of AI, but our next guest wants us to focus on the current and tangible effects of AI today, especially when it comes to the impact on the environment.
Sasha Luccioni is a leading researcher on the environmental impact of AI. She was named one of Time Magazine's most influential people in AI in the last year, and recently named one of the Globe and Mail's 20 changemakers in business. Sasha, welcome to The Social. Good to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so I want to dive in because you've been a researcher for decades, but then you came across this study in 2019 and it changed the course of your work. Talk to us about that.
Essentially, I quit my job and I started working on this topic because this paper came out in 2019 that said training an AI model emits as much carbon as 5 cars in their lifetimes. And I was like, that can't be right. That can't be right for all models. It can't be like the ones I'm making. And then I was like, am I part of the problem here? Like, what am I even doing? And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to dedicate the rest of my research to this exact topic of getting numbers, comparing, like giving people information, essentially.
Wow.
Okay, so you say that generative AI is really the biggest culprit when it comes to environmental impact. Explain that a bit.
So last year, I led the study called Power Hungry Processing, where we looked at hundreds of AI models and we compared them for the same tasks. So for example, if you want to answer a question like, what's the capital of Canada, right? And before ChatGPT, essentially, these would be extractive models. They would check out Wikipedia and find the answer and then essentially give it to you, right? Like the sentence. And nowadays we're using generative models for these exact tasks, and generative models, they don't extract answers, they generate new content, and that uses so much more energy. So 20 to 30 times more energy for the exact same like answer to that question that you're looking for, essentially.
Okay, all right, so break that down for us. So when you talk about generative AI using energy, break that down so we can like digest and understand
I know that AI is like this intangible thing because people are like, Siri, Alexa, Midjourney, but actually, every time we query an AI model, it's running on a server somewhere, and actually just training these models takes like millions of hours, like literally millions of hours on these like huge server farms. So that uses like megawatt hours of electricity, like the equivalent of like a small town, essentially. And then that emits carbon because you need to generate that energy. A lot of water as well for cooling the data centers, because if you imagine your laptop getting hot, this thing gets mega hot. And so each time we query a model, like 99% of models nowadays aren't running on our phones anymore. They're running on these servers. So every time we want to generate a cute picture of a kitten, it's on some server somewhere, and like sending the information, generating the image, all of that really adds up, and yet we don't see it because what we see is like our phone, and our phone's battery is not going down, right? So like how bad can it be? But it's actually really, really bad.
Okay, so let's talk about tech companies because they're not known for being particularly transparent. Do we know actually how AI is impacting their climate targets?
So we didn't have much information, and I've been fighting them for years about this. Like, I'm reading their reports, and then actually last year, both Google and Microsoft, they admitted that they missed their own climate targets, which they themselves set for themselves. And then they were like, well, actually, because of AI, like these targets, we just completely missed out of the ballpark on that one. And then essentially it's gotten out of their control. They essentially can't even predict where the demand is going anymore, where the energy use is going, where the emissions are going. Like net zero is out the window. So it's actually, it's actually, when we do get information, it's pretty bleak information.
All right, so with these tech companies being they're not really transparent with all the information. So what tips do you have for a customer or a regular person, a consumer, so we can make better choices about the AI that we use? So
AI is really like this blanket term, but the way I like thinking about it is like a task per task thing. Nowadays, people use AI for everything from generating recipes to searching the internet. But if you think of a certain tasks, like for example, you want a new recipe, you could open a book, right? Books are still a thing. You can look at a website, or you can use ChatGPT, and maybe it will tell you to, use chlorine gas or whatever that happened once. But so essentially, step by step, and also don't think that like ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever is the default. Like nowadays, I talk to teenagers, they're like, oh, I always have ChatGPT open on my laptop, and I use it as a calculator, I use it to answer questions, I use it for everything and anything. And I'm like, you don't, for 99% of those tasks, like using a ChatGPT instead of your calculator is like 10,000 times more energy. It's just ridiculous, right? But then again, if you need to generate like a haiku about how crappy the weather is in Toronto, sure, use ChatGPT for that. You can't find that on the internet, right? And so think about what you're doing, open a book, use a paper and pencil for your grocery list, like try to think about each one of those tasks. And for example, for web search, I use Ecosia, which is this search engine.
Can you say that again?
It's called Ecosia. Eco-S-I-A. Yeah, it's like a tiny German company, and they use renewable energy, no generative AI, like fluff in there, and they're really like dedicated to making web search sustainable. And so sometimes, I'm looking for a really niche piece of information, and then I have to fall back to Google or Bing because they have better search engines sometimes, but like my default now is Ecosia, and I know that it's a tangible thing that I can do on a day-to-day basis that, will go against the AI that's being force-fed to us, essentially. Like, we can't even opt out of it anymore in so many cases, and I want to, make these informed choices, and I think that people can do that as well.
Well, that's great, because I'd never even heard of that. Isn't that great? And also just even thinking about what we as parents or educators can tell kids, like, don't use it for this, use it for this.
You have a choice. Like,
you have a choice.
As users, we have choices.
So are we seeing AI being used to actually combat climate change in any way? Because like, I know people are using to get ideas, fresh new ideas. Is that at all happening?
Well, so climate change is like this, they call it a wicked problem because it has so many tiny little problems to be solved. And so AI can help some of those problems. So for example, designing new molecules for batteries, because lithium ion batteries, we know that they lose their charge, they actually take a lot of resources to be made. And so AI has been used for generating completely new novel molecules for those batteries that can be synthesized and like tested. So like there are small problems that can be solved with AI, but a lot of climate change are people problems, are behaviors that we have to change and like social structures that we have to change, and AI is not going to help solve that.
All right, so what do you say to the people who are like, listen, the cat's out of the bag with AI, it's too late to course correct? What do you say to that person?
That's a very convenient thing to say for a big tech company, but we're the users of the technology, and at the end of the day, our choices matter for their bottom line and for their market cap and whatnot. So by making these informed choices, we can push back on that.
Okay. Sasha, thank you so much. So much food for thought, keeping this conversation going in the work that you do. Thank you so much for being here today. And don't go anywhere, we're gonna be right back.
Hey you, come a bit closer. We've got so many more must-see interviews, spicy debates, lifestyle tips, and pop culture moments. So subscribe to our channel by tapping the logo below and don't miss out.